Hey Dude Facts family, you've made it to episode 4 in our Dude Dollop series. You've heard from Jeff, Ryan, and Grant, and now it's time for yours truly to share about his life and the things he's passionate about. That's right, it's J Philly time. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of Joe, and enjoy. The Dollop drops now. Hey Dude Faxers, Josh here. This is episode 4 in our Dude Dollop series, and you've heard from Jeff and Grant and Ryan already, and so you've got to hear a little about their story and something that they're passionate about. So it is now my turn to speak with you. And so, yeah, you should be excited. You've come to the end of this horrific listening experience. You only have about 20 or 30 more minutes to go. You'll get there. And then I promise next time we release an episode, which should be on Monday, June 12th, you're going to have all 4 of the dudes together. And I believe we have a really awesome special topic for you that you're really going to enjoy. That episode. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're excited to be back with you. We've done this because several of us have traveled or been out of place over the last couple of weeks. So we thought this would be a great way to spend that time because we do want you to know a little bit about us, what we bring to the table when we do a podcast, so you can maybe understand why we believe or speak or act the way that we do. So our wives have been trying to figure those things out for a long time. If they would just listen to the podcast, they would understand some of that. So today what I want to do, I want to give you a little bit about my background and a little bit of my story. And then I want to share a little bit of a passage, an event out of the Bible that has, over the last little bit, has really become one of my absolute favorite stories in all of Scripture. And it's out of the book of Joshua. It really has nothing to do with the fact he's named after me, but it's just a great story. So just a little bit about myself, and to help you maybe grab some of what I'm going to talk to you about, I've actually put together a PowerPoint. That's right. Just like Ryan, I'm a nerd, but I actually tend to the point of dork a little more than nerd. I think nerd is really more of the things that you're into. Dork is more of a personality. I like to call it a trait or an enhancement, a personality enhancement. I'm 44. I'm a dad. I love dad jokes. I like being goofy. I like sticking my foot in my mouth, saying inappropriate things without really thinking how bad it is until after I've said it. That's kind of where I am in that. So I'm going to share this screen here. Let's see. Give me a second to figure everything out. All right. So I'm just going to walk you through some pictures of my life kind of growing up. Now, I can't see myself anymore. So if something starts hanging from my nose or whatever, you'll just have to forgive me. I won't be able to fix it. So your screen's black. It's okay. It's fine. It should be like that. So here's my first picture. I am a dork. I am a nerd. I told you that. That's me. The picture on the couch, that's me and my brother. He's the cool kid in the stonewashed jeans and the Nikes. I'm kind of the dorky one. Those glasses, that when I got glasses in 4th grade, my parents, I thought they loved me, but for some reason they let me get these glasses. And it just set me on a trajectory to dorkdom that I have never really recovered from. But one of the key things about my life that you see in the other picture where I'm on, that's called a telephone. Just so you guys know, back in the day, they actually were attached to the wall. So it's a corded telephone. But my shirt, if you can't tell, and you guys that are listening, it actually says Southern Baptist Convention on it. I've joked around in a past episode about how, I think the saying was Southern Baptist born, Southern Baptist bred, and when I die, I'll be Southern Baptist dead. some of you feel that real deep inside of you because that's who you are. But I was raised Southern Baptist. Church I'm in right now is non-denominational. But I was so Baptist, so Southern Baptist, that my family actually went to the actual Southern Baptist convention that happened every year. And that's where I got that t-shirt. I am the son of a music minister. My dad, at all the churches I went to growing up, he directed the music. And we're always in churches with choirs and orchestras, singing out of the hymn book. I love that. I love modern too, but I still appreciate a good choir and good musicians and all that. So that's kind of my childhood, just growing up in a Christian home, always in church, but having a little nerdhood there. But I've always loved the church. I've always loved the local church. Being a part of it, seeing how it worked from the inside with my dad being a minister. But part of that is also seeing some of the negative in those things. But I've always loved being a part of the church. This is me in youth group. Jeff and I have talked about how we were in youth group together. This is probably like my sophomore year, freshman or sophomore year. And then Jeff is a year older than I am. We were doing the famous peanut butter skit where one of the guys smells really bad or has bad acne or bad hair or whatever. The other guy says that the trick is to use peanut butter. And so we ended up with peanut butter pretty much everywhere on us by the end of that skit. But we were in youth group together, and that banner says Disciple Now Weekend. Maybe it was during a Disciple Now. I don't really remember. And then after high school, I went off to college, met my wife, Bridget. You'll see a picture of her in just a second. And then from there, we went to seminary in Fort Worth, where I studied student ministry. And those are my two girls that were born while we were there. Olivia's the older one. Bailey, who you can't see her face, that's the younger one. And it actually looks like I've slept there, probably because my wife started sleeping and she stopped waking me up during the middle of the night. But our girls were born there. And then from there, I went into full-time ministry as a student pastor at a church in Nashville and then at First Baptist in Clarksville, which we've talked a lot about. That's where me, Jeff, Grant, and Ryan kind of all came together. I'd already known Jeff, but the four of us met there. So here's a couple pictures of me and Jeff, really serious about the work God has called us into as youth ministers. I mean, we were focused, as you can tell in these pictures. And then there's us with Ryan again, really focused in on ministry. Y'all didn't know, Ryan didn't tell you this in his Dollop, but he is a huge believer, really is. And then Grant with the really nice tan lines there. That's him being bored by Puerto Rico. And then that's my wife. This was just a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, we renewed our vows during after a really rough season in our life. We were on the beach with some friends, and she had set this up, and one of my best friends in the world was there to officiate, and that was at our vow renewal. And then, oh goodness, how in the world did that picture get in there? Sorry, guys. So that's the end of those pictures. Oh, it's still there. Let me stop sharing the screen. There we go. All right, I got to find y'all again. Hold on, I'm slow. There we go. So a little bit about my life. So up until a few years ago, just 2 months ago, I took a job. We've talked about this at another church here in Clarksville. We had moved away and then moved back a few months ago. And I am, my title is Connections Pastor at a church called The Bridge. And it's really an awesome setup for me. I love the work. I love the job. Basically, I am just in charge of helping people get to know each other and develop deep relationships and community, true community. So we'll talk about that maybe at some point a little deeper, but that's what I'm doing right now. You may also notice I'm wearing glasses for the first time on the podcast because I did something very Josh a couple of days ago. I was on my last pair of contacts. I was planning on like ordering some more. I just hadn't done it yet. And I go to bed one night. I put my contacts in the case like I always do, put my glasses on, got in bed. And then the next day when I went to put my contacts in, my case was sitting on the bathroom counter, but both of the tops if you don't wear contacts, maybe you don't know, but you get a little case with two little bowls in it and they have little caps, and you put your eye juice stuff in there on your contacts overnight. And but both of the caps are off. One of the little bowls had a contact with juice in it, and then the other bowl was completely dry. And I could not find that other contact anywhere. So I don't know what happened. Maybe I sleepwalked during the night. But now I'm in this period between not having contacts and them coming, so I'm wearing my glasses. Not as dorky as the ones I had in fourth grade, but pretty close. So that's kind of about my life. I have some hobbies, things that I really enjoy doing. And I brought some things to show you. One, I love movies. I could sit around and watch movies kind of all the time. I'm a big fan. And really, I'm just a big fan of a good story. And I think we've talked about this. It doesn't really matter what genre it is. If it's a good story, I'll watch it. Some of my favorite movies. I am a huge fan of the Man of Steel Superman remake that came out a few years ago. I love how they developed his character, Superman, and him growing up on the farm, and his dad kind of explaining to him who he is, and that transition. I just love, and I love the effects on that one as well. I'm a big fan of the Dark Knight trilogy. I think that the Dark Knight is one of the best movies in general of all time. But I love all three of them. Just again, the development of Batman, kind of as he developed into um, almost a bad guy himself, but a villain himself. But in all that he does is to bring order, I guess, by taking out the bad guys. But so much of it is driven by what has happened in his own life, kind of vengeance towards that. But I love the Two Towers and the Lord of the Rings. I really am not a fan of the Return of the King. I'm not a fan of the last 30 or 40 minutes because that movie could have ended like 12 times and it just kept going. And you're like, Frodo and Sam, get up the freaking mountain. Just do it. Anyways, it goes on forever. I like rom-coms as well. Again, if it's a good story. I like The Proposal with Ryan Reynolds and what's her name? Just left my mind. I had brain surgery a couple years ago, and this is my excuse for any time I forget something is that. But watch her name; it'll come to me later. And then there's also another movie that he was in called Just Friends, where he wears a fat suit the entire time, and it's just hilarious. I roll through that. But I love kind of any kind of movie. If it's got a good story, I can get into it. I'm a big Titans fan. You can see my Titans football there. And I've been a fan since they came to Tennessee. I was raised a Giants fan, but then became a Titans fan. This is Javon Curse, who, being raised a UT fan, a University of Tennessee fan, I didn't like him in college because he played for the Florida Gators, who Jeff likes. But he went to the Titans, and I immediately went and bought. After they made the playoffs that first year, they were in Nashville, and they were actually made it to the Super Bowl. I went and bought a Javon Curse jersey, and then he left the team that offseason. So I like the Titans. I like sports. I like watching them, football most definitely more than anything else. I like the St. Louis Cardinals. I like the Nashville Predators and the Blues, St. Louis Blues, which is weird in sports. And I grew up a Knicks fan, but living in Dallas in the Fort Worth area, right around a few years before they won the NBA championship, we went to some games. Got to see Dirk Nowitzki, Steve Nash, Jason Finley, some of these guys. Just an awesome team to watch. Became a Mavericks fan. I know this is weird. I don't know, but I like pipes. I don't have a bunch of them, but I like unique pipes. And this one actually came from Malawi, a country in Africa, and you can tell it's an elephant. But pipes are so neat, especially hand carved wooden ones like that. So I kind of like to collect that. So, and then I like food and donuts. I'm a big food fan. Love food. I love drinking out of donut coffee mugs. I've never really, I won't turn a meal down, especially even if it's something I don't know much about. I'll try it. I'll try pretty much any food. Cycling. I love to ride my bike. That's why I wore my Trek t-shirt. I'm a big Trek bike fan. I don't bike as much as I used to, which is a God thing. And we might touch on that some, but I still love getting out there on country roads and cycling around. And I've just recently gotten into woodworking. I like that. I like doing some video editing. There's a few things that I have that I'm into. But I'm a family guy. I really love my family. I love my parents. I love my brother, of course, my wife and my kids. But I was kind of raised that way. We have real tight relationships. And so this kind of represents that. This is actually something my mom gave me. It says, "You're my sunshine" on it. She would sing this to us most every night going to bed. And so it's actually a little music box. I don't know if you can hear it here. If I can get it. I know it sounds like something that might be in a horror movie, but it's really meaningful to me. All right, so that's enough about me. You got a little bit of my background, right? Born and raised in the church, love the church, a little dorky, have kind of moved around different ministry positions, and now a part of this podcast. And we do joke around a lot. In fact, before I move on, I do have a dad joke I want to give you, and of course, it requires just the right ambiance. Oh, wait. Let me try this. Hold on. There we go. There we go. After an unsuccessful harvest, a farmer decided to give it a go in the music industry. He thought, I do have some pretty sick beats. You get it? Do you need to think about it? Bad harvest, sick beats. Okay. Anyways, that's a great dad joke. When you groan at it, and I give Grant a hard time, but all of his dad jokes are fantastic because they should make you groan. So all that, that kind of makes me up, and that kind of makes the guys up. We love humor, we love comedy, we love ministry, we love the local church, we love Jesus, and he is the reason why we do this podcast. He probably shakes his head at times, but we want to use the medium of a podcast with the use of comedy just to share about life and point back to him. So Jesus has done a big work in my life, as he's done in everyone's life who follows him. But my story is a little challenging. It's challenging for me to tell, and I'm not going to give you all the details of it, but I think that's true not just for me. I think most Jesus followers, they're following after him because they have experienced how he has worked in their life through difficult times. And they keep following him because he continues just to show up and provide. So I told you one of my favorite Bible stories is out of the book of Joshua. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll paraphrase some of it. But I do have my big, massive, nerdy Bible. I love the CSB. That's kind of what I do for all my personal read and study. And so this is the story after, if you're familiar with the story of God's people, they were enslaved in Egypt, grew to about 1 million people or so, 2 million, wandered through the wilderness. And Grant mentioned this last time, that as they're in the wilderness, you had Moses come down with the 10 Commandments. And then they God was going to lead them to a place called the Promised Land. Like this, they've been in exile pretty much their whole existence. God's people have always kind of existed in exile in one way or the other. And so they're leaving that, and they're going to a land that he promised to give them. He promised Abraham that, generations before, that his offspring would inherit a land and be a land flowing with milk and honey, right? Freedom and flourishing is this land. So they're heading that way. But when they first get there, they send some spies in. They have to cross a river called the Jordan. They go in and they get freaked out because big people live there, and they come back, and the whole nation's like, I don't know. Let's just wander in the wilderness or go back to Exodus. That's where the story of Egypt is. Let's go back to Egypt and hang out there. So so God's like, all right, you didn't have faith to follow me. So they wander in the desert for 40 years. That generation dies off. They come back after 40 years to that same spot at the river. And across the river, they can see where they want to be. This promised land, this place of freedom and flourishing that God had promised to give them. So Moses is told, because he disobeyed God, that you wouldn't be able to go in. He could see it, but he wouldn't be able to go in. He wouldn't lead the people over, but Joshua would. So the book of Joshua begins kind of telling his story. So they're encamped by the river Jordan, and they're seeing the promised land across the water. And the Bible tells us that at this time of year, where they were when they got to the Jordan, that it was harvest time. And that meant that the water levels in the Jordan were up. It was at flood stage. It was overflowing its banks. It was a kind of a raging river, right? They come up to it, and it's going to be very daunting to get almost 2 million people with all their possessions, all their animals across this river into the promised land. Remember, they're not like major bridges constructed at this time. They'd have to ford across these rivers. So when it's at harvest stage, you would just chill and wait for the water level to come down before you'd make a crossing like that. But they get there, and God shows up, and he talks to Joshua. He's like, Joshua, tomorrow we're crossing this river. And Joshua's, okay, all right. And God gives some instructions to him to pass on to the people. And let me read some of those to you. This is in Joshua chapter 3. Here's what God says. He says it to the people through some of the leaders. When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God carried by the priest, you're to break camp and follow it, but keep a distance of about 1,000 yards between yourselves and the ark. Don't go near it so that you can see the way to go, for you haven't traveled this way before. So he first says, follow the ark of the covenant. This is, if you're not familiar with the Bible, but you've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, this is the thing that was open at the end of the movie and everybody's faces melted off. So that's where the Holy Spirit resided. And the priests were going to carry this ark ahead of the people, and they were to follow it because they hadn't been to the promised land yet. So the first thing is follow where God is leading. And like, okay. And then they get a second instruction brought to them by Joshua. And this is the day before they're going to cross the river. Joshua then told the people, consecrate yourselves because the Lord will do wonders among you tomorrow. So today you're to consecrate, and then tomorrow God's going to show up and do something awesome. This word consecrate, it just simply means to make something holy and set apart for a unique purpose. Right. So this mug is consecrated for my use. This is my mug, right? No one else. So just for me, it's been set apart. I have a few coffee mugs like that. You might have something that's just yours and you don't let anybody else use it. That thing has been set apart for your use, for specific use. So these are God's people, and they're saying, consecrate yourself. And so in their mind, they're thinking, I need to get to a place spiritually where I'm right between me and God, and I can be used by him. So they would actually go through a series of spiritual cleansing, or of cleansing themselves spiritually, this way of washing physically their hands, their face, their clothes, all that, to kind of remove themselves from this reputation of sin that had been in their life, to say, God, we're clean now and we can follow you. So they do that, right? They go through, they consecrate themselves for the Lord's purpose. And then he says, after that instruction to consecrate themselves, Joshua then said to the priests, carry the Ark of the Covenant and go on ahead of the people. So they carried the Ark of the Covenant and went ahead of them. And then they sleep and they get to the next day. The Lord spoke to Joshua. He said, today I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel so that they will know that I will be with you just as I was with Moses. And then here's the command to give to the priest. You're at the water's edge of this raging, overflowing river that will be, seems impossible to cross with 2 million people. He said, command the priest, this is God speaking to Joshua, command the priest carrying the Ark of the Covenant, command them this, when you reach the edge of the water, stand in the Jordan. And then Joshua gathered all the people around. I don't know how this worked with all those many people, but he then said, "Come closely and listen to the words of the Lord your God. You will know that the living God is among you, and that you will certainly possess this land." I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Verse 13, when the feet of the priest who carry the ark of the Lord of the whole earth, when they come to rest in the Jordan's water, its water will be cut off. The water flowing downstream will stand up in a mass. Okay, so before they ever get into the water, here's what they're told. Consecrate yourself, follow the ark, and then when the priests just put the soles of their feet in the water, they're not going all the way in. They just step into the water and get their feet wet. You're going to see that water stop flowing. Now, maybe they had heard stories of how their ancestors had crossed the Red Sea after the Exodus from Egypt and how the water stood up, but they didn't see it. Now they're on their own and they're seeing this raging water, all their people, all their stuff, the promised land on the other side, where they really want to be, a place of freedom and flourishing in their lives. And the only instruction they're given of how they're going to get across is that the priest who are carrying the ark, they're just going to put their feet in the water and then the water's going to stop flowing. That's all they're given. And you got to imagine there's some thoughts of, all right, God, really, can we build a bridge? Can we wait a little bit until it stops flowing so much? Is there another way to do that? I don't know if you're seeing what's going on here. We got a lot of stuff. We've accumulated a lot of stuff. I'm not sure how we're going to get all this stuff across. And that may have been going on in their minds. But then as we read on in the story, we see that's exactly what happened. That as they moved towards the water, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant hit that water, the water stops flowing. And we read that this whole nation crossed on dry land again, just like the Red Sea. Not muddy, because all that stuff would get bogged down. Dry land they walked across. Now, there's something else that goes on in that story, in the story after that I'm not going to read about, I'll just tell you. But God commands them, one, to get 12 stones out of the river, and they're going to create an altar on the riverbank, but they're also to create an altar in the middle of the river. So both places, they stack these stones. And when the water starts flowing, it runs over the stones. They don't see it anymore. So that's just something God wanted there. But the pillar they stack up, these 12 stones, because there were 12 tribes, that they stack up on the other side of the river in the promised land, there's a purpose. And we read further on in Joshua 4 that the purpose of these stones is so that when their children and their children's children are walking around this area with their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, and they see that stone pillar and they ask, why is this here? What's this about? Joshua says it's in those moments that you're going to be able to remind them or tell them the story of how God delivered us across the Jordan into the land he promised us. To remind them of how great God is and his power in stopping that water and his goodness in providing a way across and his provision in that land of freedom and flourishing. I love that story. And it's been something that over just the last couple of months has really settled into my heart. Let me take you back just a little bit in the next few minutes. I know this is gonna be a little longer than the other guys, but I talk a lot. 3 years ago, I got a tick bite. I'm not gonna give you all these details, but I got a tick bite. We didn't think anything of it, get them all the time. I got rid of it. It only stayed on for probably about 15 or 20 minutes. And that happened in April of 2000. I didn't really start feeling bad till mid-May. But at the end of May, I was on this bike ride. It was going to be a week-long bike ride, and I was feeling terrible, worse and worse every day. I come off that ride, and at the end of May, we're going to see doctors, try to figure things up. I came off halfway through, trying to figure out. We never got a diagnosis of what was going on until August. So from April to May, June, July, August. So 4 months, I'm just feeling worse and worse and worse. It really felt like my body was just kind of shutting down slowly. And I come to find out my immunity was shut off. So my body didn't react the way it normally would to having infections from a tick bite. So it took a long time to really figure this out. We figured it out in August of 2000. And I go on a super dose of antibiotics for a few months. I'm feeling better in October. Actually went to work for a week and then had to have my appendix taken out, which put me down for a couple of weeks after that, trying to recover. Then I started having all this weird neurological stuff going on, dizziness, sleep issues, faintness, just a lot of strange things. Get an MRI done on Christmas Eve, and I end up getting diagnosed with what's called Chiari malformation. You can look it up, but basically the back of my brain was it had inflamed, probably from the infection, and it was now pressure is being put on my cerebellum, which was causing all this issue. So I had to have surgery for that. That's the brain surgery, and had that in March of 21. And they went in, they shrunk my brain, and then sewed it up. And it took about 6 months to really begin feeling normal again. And even now I have issues from both of those, from the infection, from the tick bite, and from the brain surgery. But I'm functional. But I've slowed down in some things, and I have memory issues, and I can't ride my bike as much, and I have to take a migraine medicine every day, and it created AFib as well. So I've got heart issues, but the medicine, praise God, completely takes care of that. So all that, and in my life, and I tell you that because God used and allowed that tick to crawl up my thigh and to stick his grimy little head in my skin and to transfer these bacterial infections into my body, because he needed to deal with something in my life. For a long, long time, I was not where I needed to be spiritually. I had some habits and practices that I hadn't dealt with, that were detrimental to my life, to my spiritual life, to my ability to minister rightly to people, to love my family well, to serve my wife and my kids in the right way. So God allowed this illness to address a deeper spiritual illness that was in my life. And he did. The last 3 years have been full of recovery and healing on many different levels in my life to address those things. Guys, this is a 3-hour story. I'm just going to condense it. So he's been at work in my life using something really difficult. I didn't work for a year and a half. I thought I had major heart issues. Guys, I had brain surgery, all this stuff. But I look back on it now, while I don't want to go through it again, I would not trade what I have learned and what I've experienced. I am a different man because of that experience in my life. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And as I've started studying Joshua in these 2 chapters, 3 and 4 specifically, over the last couple of months, I just see so much of what went on in their life play out in mine. And I tell you this not to pat myself on the back, but to encourage you, because you might be in a place where I was, where you knew there were some spiritual health issues, some things keeping you from being who God wants you to be, who he created you to be, who he's calling you to be. But when you look at addressing that sin issue in your life, that spiritual unhealth in your life, it can seem like that rushing Jordan River. And you're like, there's no way I'm going to get across this. I want to be on the other side. I know how awesome it'll be on the other side. And I want to be there. But I don't know how to get across this mess. If I address it, it's going to be dangerous. It's going to disappoint people. It's going to be hard. And I don't know how to do it. And that's where I was. That's where I was in my story, in my life. I knew of my spiritual unhealth. But I thought, man, if I face this, if I address this, it's going to be catastrophic for so many people. For me, definitely for my family, for my ministry, whatever. Like it was going to be hard. So instead of me consecrating myself and taking that step of faith into that raging river and seeing God provide, I kept standing on the other side for a long time. So God, in his divine wisdom, allowed something to happen to force that step in my life. It was one of these things where I was on that ride and I said, God, if you get me home, I'll take care of this. Because I was scared. I literally thought I might have a heart attack and die. I'm not joking. I'm not see, I lost a word right there. exaggerating. I thought I might die. And so I was praying on my bike on the last day I rode, God, if you will just get me home, I'll take care of this. So he got me home. That next day I addressed it. It was not easy. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. But I saw from moment one for the next 3 years up until now, nothing but God's grace and mercy. He delivered me across that Jordan, and he did so in amazing ways, in powerful ways. And I committed myself to him day one. Lord, whatever this journey looks like, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll have the conversations. And it was difficult every time on my end, but I always received grace. It was like God was just saying, I had this the whole time. The whole time. And now I've come to a point where anytime I see something like that, like I need to address this or I need to make this decision, whether it's something like what I had in the past or it's just an opportunity, I just want to take whatever that step is. I want to recognize that God seldom gives us the whole story, but it's a good story. And his grace is always there. The step might not make sense, but he will provide. And what's at the other end of obedience to him is freedom and flourishing. I'm a testimony to that. Guys, I'm living in the best time of my life right now. Although I've had all that stuff, I'm limited physically. I have some issues still mentally, don't make fun of me, like literal mental issues and neurological issues. I'm having the time of my life right now. I'm 44. I'm in a great church. My family has shown me tons of grace. God has freed me, has worked in me, has been healing me and still is. And I just love where it is. Now, I know I might not always be in this position, but we're on the mountain right now and I'm enjoying it. But I know that anything God calls me to, if I'll be obedient in that first step, he's going to take me to the next place he wants me to be. And it's going to be great. Even if it's hard, it's going to be great. Now, the thing I want to leave you with, at the end of that story, they build a pillar of remembrance so that people will remember what God did. So I did something this past week that I never thought I would do. And it may make some people uncomfortable just because of maybe what you believe Scripture teaches. But I got a tattoo right there on my arm, and I don't know how well you can see it. Again, turning my arm that way is kind of difficult. I don't know if you can see it. At the bottom is Hebrew lettering, and that's Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals. And then I've got 3 stones. I don't have 12. I have 3 stones stacked on top of it. And it's my remembrance. It's my pillar of remembrance for what God has done in my life. How he's healed me physically, spiritually, mentally. And I got this for me. It's even upside down for, I guess, how you're supposed to get a tattoo done. But it's done to where I can see it. To where when I look at it, I'm reminded of what God has done in my life. So if that's you, if you've had an experience, maybe you have followed God in obedience, man, my encouragement for you is mark it down. Mark it down in your life. Don't forget where you came from, where you are now, and what God did to get you there. Because this for me, and the thought of that is one of those things that I want to honor it, but I also want it to be this thing that I can go back to over and over and over and over again and remember God's goodness, because I don't want to forget it. I don't want to go back to the normal grind of life, ignore God when things are good. I want to remember he has brought me here. It's by his grace and provision and his mercy. He didn't give me what I deserve, but he has brought me into a good land of freedom and flourishing. It just takes a step of faith, trusting him and following him. I hope that encourages you. I love sharing that story, which is why I can ramble. I'm at 38 minutes. Sorry. But that's it. Yeah. Thanks for listening. And if you have any questions about anything I've talked about, man, reach out. Let me know. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, wherever. Just let me know. And I'd love to talk to you about that stuff. Hey, we'll be back a week from the day this Dollop releases. So be looking for brand new podcast, all 4 of the dudes together, Monday, June 12th. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. We will talk to you guys later.